I remember the hush in the basilica, how it bent and curled around the marble pillars and old stones, the way your insides turn over just before a fall. It was Sunday, the kind of spring morning when Rome teeters between rain and sun, wet streets shivering under stubborn light. People had come not just to pray, but for the weekly assembly, half social ritual, half unspoken reckoning. That day, the subject of their inquisition was me. I sat rigid near the back, flanked by my mother and my uncle Arturo, his arms slung heavy on the pew, heavy over my future. The local priest, Don Ernesto, stood near the steps to the altar, flicking glances from his weathered script to my face. Maria. Don Ernesto always used my full name, never Mary or even Maria Julia, which my friends preferred. You say you are going to join scientists in making machines that think. He let his fingers shape quotes in the air, and some people tittered. And change medicine. Tell us, how exactly will this happen? He offered a wan smile, but his eyes asked, Are you serious? The gathering leaned forward, coins trickling into velvet offering plates. I felt their gaze like a burn. My throat was sand. I'd known it would come to this. The city had always thrived on its blend of grandeur and skepticism, the old and beautiful crumbling into the new, with no guarantee anyone would want what you tried to build. I want to work on building machines that help doctors predict illnesses, machines that can look at your genes, at how your body works inside, better than any doctor can just by looking at you. Someone behind me scoffed, a thick-chested man who ran the pasticceria. So now a computer will tell me when I am to die, eh? Perhaps it will say I am already dead. A ripple of laughter. I pressed on. Think of it this way. My hands searched for something to hold. When Nana got sick, the doctors tried all kinds of medicines before they found the one that helped. Why not use technology that can check everything? Blood, history, all at once and get it right sooner? Why not save pain? My mother fidgeted with her rosary. Uncle Arturo was shaking his head as if I was indulging a childish fancy. You could have been a lawyer, Maria, he grumbled, loud enough. Even a good teacher. All this studying, and for what? Inventing toys to scare us. Don Ernesto nodded, grave. The world is uncertain, my child. We need faith and practical skills. Maybe help at the pharmacy, as your cousin does. A few eager nods. I stared at the altar's flickering candles, trying not to show how much I wanted to hide. Giovanna Rossi, the woman who had overseen my first communion and coached the choir, stood. We all want the best for Maria, she said, a hand on my shoulder, her voice sticky sweet. But dreams should be realistic, no? The world is not changed with fantasies. There was warmth in her grip, but also triumph. Even as my heart thudded, something in me froze and hardened. I nodded through the rest, said little. When we filed outside, sunlight pooled on the flagstones, and Rome sprawled casual and ancient along the Tiber. I slipped away, before anyone could give me advice about bank jobs or secretarial schools, before anyone could hug their endorsement of my future into my skin. That night, alone by my window in Trastevere, I listened to the scooters bouncing over cobbles. All the houses glowed gold, their windows soft and forgiving. I made myself a promise, tender, stubborn, not for their ears. I would prove them wrong. It wasn't an easy way to leave. My mother wept quietly the morning I left for Turin on the early train. She did not want others to see her cry. I hugged her, promising I would write, promising to come home for Christmas, knowing I would not. I spent the ride with my knees jammed against a suitcase, notebook open, scribbling lines of code and theory, repressing the ache that ballooned whenever Rome slipped behind another hill. The next years collapsed in a montage of blank tiles and fluorescent labs. I flinched when I heard Roman dialect, took the night train back for funerals or to drop off my savings for Mama. All through it, there was a whisper in my blood. Prove them wrong. Prove yourself. Don't turn to salt. I missed the city desperately, but I could never stay longer than a day. The city shrank from me, or I from it. I met disappointment the way you meet cold tiles at sunrise, suddenly, then over and over. My early models failed software, tripped over noise, datasets warped by bias, algorithms misleading. I was a woman at the edges, always apologizing, barely believed. Colleagues asked about Rome, mostly as a joke. Are the Romans still too busy with their gelato to care about your AI? One postdoc taunted, in perfect British, I worked through holidays, lived on vending machine coffee, and when my experiment finally flickered into something close to a working model, a predictive system that flagged rare illnesses with frightening accuracy, I submitted it for review. The first response? Interesting, but too ambitious. Perhaps consider a smaller goal. My nearest friend in Turin, Elena, found me crying in the library. We were slouched between shelves, under dim lights that smelled of glue and old books. Maybe they're right, I said. Maybe I am ridiculous. Maybe I should have stayed and made life easier. She passed me a tissue, her voice flat. You want easy, you go home and sell cheese. You want real, you keep going. You don't owe Rome anything but the truth, whatever you find. Late that summer, I got an email from a team in Cambridge, cold and businesslike, but with a single phrase that stuck to my ribs. We would be interested in discussing your research further. I went. I did not tell my family until I was halfway to the airport. Years passed in a gray rush. The English city pressed into me new shapes, its Gothic damp, its fast dusk, the clipped accents around the quads. The urgency of people who assumed the world was theirs to discover and remake. I was left longing not just for Rome, but for the parts of me that belonged only on Italian, the gentle vowels of home. Yet inch by inch, my work caught notice. We spun out a startup. People said my code was clean, my obsession lucky. I saw my models used in clinics from Manchester to Berlin, then quietly in Milan and Florence. My mother sent me clippings, an article in Corriere, a note from a family friend in Naples. Cousin Marco, once the loudest skeptic, texted, "Mama keeps saying you're a genius. She says even the priest talks about you now." It made me laugh, but it hurt too. I hardly recognized myself after so many years. I had learned to hide my tenderness behind facts and numbers. But every time a project worked, your patient's case changed for the better, I remembered the smears and kind dismissals of that Sunday in Rome. I buried myself in work, always on the run. Sometimes I wondered if, when the moment came, I would have the courage to return. It was not a grand homecoming. I came back in winter, under the pretense of a scientific conference in Rome. I sent my mother the old familiar texts, "Ci faccio da mangiare." She peppered me with questions. Would I bring presents? Would I stay long? The city smelled wet, lemons in the air, bus exhaust resting under December fog. The first night I arrived, my mother clasped me as though she could save lost time by holding me tight. "You look so thin," she said, counting ribs that had always been there. "Eat. Rest. Please, just stay." That week, the church I had left in shame sent an invitation. They were holding a community forum on science and faith. At first, I almost laughed, then almost refused. My mother's eyes sparkled the way they used to when she imagined me as a soprano or a saint. "I think you should go, Maria," she said, quiet but certain. "People talk, but now they want to listen." The forum was set in the same basilica, pews arranged in wary semicircles. Walls loomed with frescoes of saints who had never needed jobs, never faced the scowls of their neighbors. Don Ernesto was older, stiffer at the pulpit, but there was something different in his voice, hesitation, hope, a willingness to be proved wrong. I dressed plain black trousers, a soft white knotted blouse, no flash of a corporate badge. My hair was longer, wild from travel, streaked with the stress of years. Don Ernesto's introduction was careful. We welcome back Dr. Maria Giulia Riccioli, a daughter of our parish, now a scientist working at the frontiers of medicine. She has been kind enough to speak to us. The murmurs started, softer than before. People leaned in, peering. I saw faces from childhood. Giovanna Rossi, now sprouting silver wisps. The pasticceria man, arms crossed. Uncle Arturo near the aisle, his jaw set. I stepped forward, palms sweating. The weight was as much memory as fear. "Thank you for having me," I began. "I have been away many years. I missed Rome every day. No laughter this time, only the shuffle of prayer cards. I want to show you something," I said. My laptop, always with me, battered, familiar, was connected to the projector, its screen filling with maps of tissue cells, scrolling lines of genetic code. I had rehearsed, half hoping nobody would understand. "This is not a fantasy," I said, keeping my voice gentle but strong. "This is a child's blood test. He kept getting sick, nobody could say why. But my team trained a model to search every part of his DNA in minutes. It found an answer, an illness so rare that even the best doctors wouldn't have thought to look. We sent him the right treatment. 3 months later, he was eating gelato in Florence. I saw them lean, jaws slack, not sure whether to clap. I touched the screen. This was done using technology by people from Turin, Oxford, and now from our own Italy. You don't have to be rich or powerful. You just have to believe. I flicked through slides, stories of other patients discovered by our engine, Italian hospitals using my software, photos of nurses smiling with families. Not Hollywood, but real. A grandmother from Naples laughing in her kitchen, a boy playing football, a mother, tears caught on her cheekbones. The silence afterwards was deep, not hostile, not full of mockery, but the silence of new possibility. Someone broke it, Giovanna herself, who had led my condemnation. "Maria Giulia," she choked, a tremble. Uncle Arturo rose, slow, his expression hard to read. I braced for dismissal. Instead, he cleared his throat, voice thick. "You always were stubborn, Maria. But this," he gestured at